Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. My name is Matt Baker. Thank you so much for joining us this week in a non-city match week, bye week for most of Major League Soccer, despite the fact that Decision Day is just a week and a half, just over a week away. St. Louis City SC does not have a match this week. However, there is still plenty to talk about. On this episode of Flyover Footy, we're going to be diving into City 2, because their season will hopefully be continuing for quite some time, at least longer than City, as City 2 will play next on October 19th, the Sunday, the day after Decision Day for St. Louis City and the final match day in Major League Soccer. In addition to City 2, on this episode, we're going to be looking at probably the biggest storyline that exists for St. Louis right now, and that is who will be the head coach when 2026 rolls around. We've got to look at David Critchley, a look at what is to come for him, and what really is riding on this last match of the year. So no match this weekend, but when we wrap things up against Real Salt Lake back at Energizer Park on October 18th, David Critchley's career as St. Louis City interim head coach into head coach, his career could be on the line in that regard. So we'll dive into that here in a little bit. And we do have an exciting featured interview with Tomas Totland. So if you're familiar with what is traditionally our midweek episode for Flyover Footy during the season, this is kind of like an expanded version of that. With no match to preview, we've got to look at City 2. We're going to look at David Critchley. We're going to hear from David Critchley as well here in a little bit. And we're going to have a nice long interview with Tomas Totland. He covers a wide range of topics, and he does get to the question, do you want to see David Critchley as manager in 2026? So stay tuned for that and a lot more. But we're going to start with City 2. City 2 has officially wrapped up their season. They finished with the best record in the entire league, MLS NEXT Pro, with 62 points in 28 games on a 17-5-6 record. 5 of those wins were shootout wins, and they ended with 60 goals scored, 37 goals allowed, and that's a 23 goal differential. They were 8-1-5 at home and 9-4-1 on the road. Now, the home record is what matters, because as the best team in MLS NEXT Pro, they have home field advantage for the duration of the playoffs, which means if they go to the finals, if they go to the final match in the NEXT Pro playoffs, City 2 could be hosting that championship match at Energizer Park. So that's exciting. And having lost one match during the regular season at home, I think we're all excited to see City 2 go that distance and see if they can bring home a trophy, bring home a cup. Now, City 2 also set an MLS NEXT Pro record this year with 18 straight matches unbeaten. That nearly ended the season with that, up until their final game of the regular season, which was a 2-1 loss to the Portland Timbers 2 team. Now, that final game of the season doesn't matter a whole lot, as City 2 had wrapped up everything in the lead up to that. The best record, home field advantage, all of the things they needed, they wrapped up. However, the biggest impact of that game last weekend is that Emil Jaskalainen received a red card at the end of that match, and per NEXT Pro rules, he will miss the first round matchup on October 19th. Now, who will City 2 be playing? That was the big question coming into this week. And on Thursday, October 9th, we found out that it would be Ventura County. Ventura County is the lately rebranded name for LA Galaxy 2. So this is the Galaxy 2's team called Ventura County, if you're not familiar. And the way that they approach this, rather, in MLS NEXT Pro is highly unique. They have a pick your opponent, where it starts with the first place team of the conference and it works its way down to the third place team. And they get to pick their opponents between those ranked 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th in the playoffs. So City 2 had their pick of the litter. In MLS NEXT Pro, they had options between North Texas, Ventura County, Whitecaps 2, and Minnesota United 2. And St. Louis City 2 on Thursday ended up choosing Ventura. Now, there are a few reasons why this probably occurred. City 2, in my opinion, they chose the team with the worst record down the stretch to face in the first round. In the regular season, City 2 defeated Ventura in PKs in July at home and then lost 3-1 away in April. Ventura is 7-4-3 away, but Ventura has also been shut out in 2 of their last 3. They've only scored 6 goals in their last 8, and they only have 1 win in their last 8 games. So form matters in this. And I think John Hackworth and Dale Schilly's side, as Hackworth is the interim manager and Dale Schilly, our academy director, is the interim assistant head coach. they're banking on form over all else, over the travel considerations for the Whitecaps too, over previous records against we had a better regular season record against Whitecaps too. I think we only played them once, but it was a win. So all of these things, I think City 2 is banking on this form going into the playoffs as one of the biggest things on why they chose to face Ventura County. It was a unique process by which they choose this. MLS Next Pro has been doing this for a couple of years now, and they keep iterating on this. So last season, it was more like a Zoom call or a live YouTube where they had representatives from all the teams. This is even back on MLS Next Pro's YouTube page if you want to go see what it was like last season for the first and second rounds. And they kind of did it publicly. This season, they did it more behind closed doors where they had the representative for the club. In this case, I think it was Dale Shilley. He at least went and talked about it on City social media, but they called the other team directly to let them know. So kind of a unique approach that they're kind of consistently changing things. But end of the day, City 2 will be playing Ventura County, and that match is 6 p.m. on Sunday, October 19th. So there's the city match to finish things out on decision day on the 18th. The city sprint 5K is on the 19th. And then later that night is City 2's first playoff match against Ventura County. Now, as City 2 wraps up their regular season, there are a host of really kind of exciting individual players to look at and noteworthy stats. So it doesn't stop, but it definitely starts with Mekhi Joyner. Mekhi Joyner has finished third in the Golden Boot race with 15 goals scored, third to Jason Shakaluk from the Chicago Fire 2 team that took the Golden Boot with 20 goals. And Joyner also had the most penalty kick goals in regulation only, because with Next Pro, they have that whole PK thing at the end of matches if a match ends up tied. Joyner had the most penalty kick goals with 9 and also had the most penalty kick attempts with 9. So Mekhi Joyner was obviously the best all-around PK taker in MLS Next Pro. Now, this also matters going into the playoffs because there's going to be a similar kind of manner where there's single elimination playoffs in the first few rounds. And the reason that this matters, obviously, is that the format changes a little. So you have some extra time that will be in play, whereas in the regular season, you had no extra time. But you can still go to PKs. And Mekhi Joyner ending matches as the most prolific PK taker in 2025 MLS Next Pro, that is an asset. So, for instance, the first weekend where Mekhi Joyner will be getting back from U20 camp just a few days before. He should be available that weekend for everything. With his record, not just his form, but his contract with City and everything, you can look for Mekhi Joyner to likely play some for that City match against Real Salt Lake. Don't look for him to start. I had a kind of an interesting conversation, a fun conversation with Matthew Rocchio from STL Sports Central the other day, talking about the number of minutes that Joyner might be playing and how they could spread that out and where he could find that time. And I think the consensus around City Park, around Energizer Park rather, and the training grounds is Joyner's likely to see some sub minutes against Real Salt Lake, but he's also likely to see the end of the match against Ventura County. As opposed to starting and coming out early, you don't want to take away your best PK taker. I think that's something that John Hackworth and Dale Shilley will have in the back of their pocket, is Mekhi Joyner finishing out that game as opposed to starting if he features for City on that Saturday. Besides Mekhi Joyner, you have Brendan McSorley. Brendan McSorley finished 5th in assists with 8. And it's not a whole lot of assists over the course of the season, but, in MLS Next Pro, it is what it is. Marco Diaz from New England Revolution 2 had 13. That was the number 1. McSorley finishing 5th with assists. That's a pretty good pedigree to add on to everything else McSorley has done so far this season. Miguel Perez had the most crosses in Major League Soccer, or in MLS Next Pro, with 44. And some other team leaders to look at. Let's look at the number of minutes overall. I want to look at a few categories just to give you an idea. If you're not familiar with City 2, 2 things, actually. If you're not familiar with City 2, I would encourage you to go to YouTube and check out MLS Next Pro's YouTube page, because they have this cool 90 in 15 series. So if you search for City 2 on their YouTube page, you can actually go back and watch highlights of every single City 2 match from this season. MLS Season Pass doesn't have a catalog like they do in MLS for all the teams. So this is your opportunity to get caught up on City 2, at least from the past few games, to understand who some of the players to watch for are going to be. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a heads up here as far as some of these leaders in some of the stat categories. Cam Silly actually led City in number of minutes this season with 2,320 across 27 matches that he appeared in. Next up would be Gabby McKenna with 2,286, Miguel Perez, then Seth Antwi, and Tyson Pierce round out the top 5 in number of minutes. So these are our stars for Next Pro. Cam Silly played in 27 matches. Gabby McKenna played in 27, started 25. Miguel Perez played in 27, started in 26. Seth Antwi played in 25, started 23. From then on, you get Emil Jaskalainen, you get Brendan McSorley, Haziel Orozco, Juan Kuzain, and Caden Glover. But this is your core. This is your nucleus of City 2 as far as the minutes goes. Goals scored. City 2 actually had 2 players with double-digit goals scored this season, and you know the names of both of them. I mentioned one, Makai Joyner with 15 goals. Miguel Perez ends up second on City 2 with 10 goals scored, thanks to that last match performance. Brendan McSorley had 8 goals. Emil Jaskalainen had 7. Mateo Kidd had 6. Caden Glover, Gabby McKenna, and Cam Silly all had 3 goals scored this season. In assists, I mentioned Brendan McSorley leading 5th in all of Next Pro with 8. Emil Jaskalainen had 7. So Jaskalainen had 7 goals, 7 assists this season. Brendan McSorley, 8 goals, 8 assists. You have Makai Joyner, Miguel Perez, Mateo Kidd, all next tied for 3rd with 3 assists. So Makai Joyner ends with 15 goals scored, 3 assists. Miguel Perez ends with 10 goals, 3 assists, and Mateo Kidd with 6 goals, 3 assists. Prolific goal scoring team. You can tell this is a lot more exciting of a numbers and team leaders and stats than City, admittedly. So that's kind of why it's fun to talk about it. Leader in actual scoring attempts, it was Brendan McSorley, Miguel Perez, Makai Joyner, the regular guys that you would expect. But key passes is an interesting metric to know, not just who scored, not just who had the assist, but whose passes led into those shot attempts. These are the playmakers. These are the guys who had the ball in the attacking end, and they were putting City in those positions to score goals. It's Miguel Perez who led the team with 53 key passes. Brendan McSorley's next with 49. Juan Kuzain with 39 follows him, and Emil Jaskalainen with 38 is in 4th. Some really, really high, good numbers for City 2 in these metrics. City 2 is still training. City 2 is still full speed ahead in their build up to the 19th. So next week on Flyover, we're going to be looking at a lot of City 2. We're going to be looking at City, and so we'll get a little bit more of a preview between City 2 and Ventura County as well. Right now, as we pivot over into the City realm of conversation, you're listening to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS, and I spoke to David Critchley on a few topics this week at training. So before we discuss David Critchley a little bit, let's hear from David Critchley, interim head coach of City 2, on a few topics from players' responses as the season has come to a close, to the timing of the sporting director and head coaching decisions, and some more. And I'll catch you on the other side of that interview to kind of debrief before we move on. How difficult has it been this season with all the stops and starts and the lack of consistency to instill that in the players and kind of get them to buy in and keep their heads focused on what you want them to do through the 3 losses, 1 win, kind of mix, rinse and repeat to get to this point where now you've got a pretty good consistent track record these past few weeks?
I think the biggest one I observed throughout my tenure here is when I stepped into the role, there was so much that needed to change. But not just that, there was also many obstacles along the way. Injuries is one, a rotation of lineups is the other. We spent, I want to say my first 9 games in charge, I had a total of 49 players injured or limited with minutes. Massive amount, as you can only imagine. So it just takes time, but the last 9 weeks we've started to finally get guys healthy, get guys fit, get guys sharp, and then just as a couple of weeks looking at the last 4 or 5 games, you really see, I think, them turning a corner and going in the right direction. So I knew I stepped into the role and I had to change a lot, and then I got thrown some curveballs and obstacles along the way. We have to navigate around them and over them and through them. But I think we're at a good place now where everybody's on the training field, everybody's hearing the same messages, and I think you start to see it on the weekend in the results.
What does it mean to you that throughout all of that, as you're talking about the playoffs, you get to the point where you're starting to turn things around on a consistent basis as you reach that kind of end of the line for the playoffs? What does it mean to you that the players are still fighting through all of that, fighting for you to get these wins despite the fact that they know they're out of the playoffs?
Yeah, I think that's the one that I've been the most proud of with the players is to see their character. When there's It depends on how we spend the message. There can be a lot to play for right now with a lot of these players, or there can be nothing to play for because we're out of playoffs. But what I've seen them do is every week for several weeks, just show up every day on the training field, train really intensely with a lot of focus, a lot of passion, and then they step in on the weekend and they give everything. I think even before the Dallas game where we drew, we had a couple of 3-2s. Every game, we were in every single game. We had some calls like the Vancouver game that, should not have ended the way they ended. So even prior to the last 4 or 5 games, there's been good growth from the team. We've been showing steps of going in the right direction. I think the only time we showed a situation where we wasn't ourselves was the LAFC game. And taking no credit away from them, they're a great team. But ever since then, I feel like we've grown every week as a team. We've got ourselves better. We're competitive in every game. But now we're competitive and we see results as well. So we're just going on the right track. We're going in the right direction. I'm almost sad to see the season come to an end with just 1 game left. I wish we could play for another 10 games and really fight for an opportunity to be in playoffs. But we'll learn a lesson as well. We'll learn the lesson of that. What I've seen in the last 4 or 5 games is the standard and the expectation for next year and more as well. So I'm looking forward to that.
Are you kind of under the impression that even if you were to get the job, they might not announce it until after a sporting director to allow them to weigh in on it?
Possibly. Which again, I think is only a fair situation to allow a sporting director to come in and feel like he has an opportunity to assess what's going on and how we can be better next year. So for me, I've kind of just tried to remain focused on the team. I have a week and a half left, I guess, where I can really impact them for RSL. So that's the main focus. And then after that, we have an off-season planning program worked out for the players. My objective there is to try and get every single player that's returning to the club, and at that point we will know who's returning, ready to be as best as they can for the following season. In regards to me, I'll be patient, I'll wait along, and I'll just try to be my best every single day up until then they make a decision.
All right, and I'm back. Matt Baker back with Flyover Footy. That was David Critchley, interim head coach from St. Louis City, talking after training on Wednesday of this week. And it seems that Critchley is kind of seeing the desire of the players, vocalizing the players want to see him and what that means in their actions on the field, their composure in training and in matches. And none of that is letting up. For as much drama and frustration as that's occurred this season, it's really hard to argue that the coach and the players all seem to now be aligned in their fight and cohesiveness together. The timing of it, you wish it was earlier, but the timing of what comes next is what I really want to focus on, really want to dive into from Critchley's comments, because this is just as much of a topic of conversation as the actual hiring of the head coach, is the timing of when things are going to happen. So what we know and what we've been told previously is, from Diego Gigliani, president and GM, is that they're looking to hire a sporting director first and then a head coach. And he wants both of them to be in place when camp opens January 2026. So you have a few possibilities at play. You have David Critchley, current interim coach, getting the full-time job. And you have John Hackworth, the technical director, interim sporting director, getting that job as well. So in my opinion, I think that if we're sticking with this timeline and what Critchley had to say as far as the sporting director being hired and then looking at the head coaching position, it seems likely that we're on track for, as soon as this season wraps up, we could potentially be seeing movement on the sporting director front. That will come first. I think all signs point to that being the official thing that happens. I've been on record saying that I think if David Critchley wins this match against Real Salt Lake, if he ends the season with another winning streak after LAFC and ends the season with this bucket of wins, that we'll talk about his record in a little bit. But if he ends this match with a win against Real Salt Lake, ends the season like that, I think he gets the job. But I also don't think it's going to be announced right away. I think Critchley's goals that he had talked about before and what we talked about last week with the front office set for him, I think that plays into this. But I also think that the sporting director is going to be offered an opportunity to weigh in on that. Now, it becomes easier if John Hackworth gets the sporting director job because, with Hackworth already having a say and probably setting some of those goals for Critchley, it seems obvious that if they announce Hackworth as sporting director, it could be a quick turnaround to announce David Critchley. It could even be concurrently. That's not outside the realm of possibility that you announce both at the same time if you're going with both Hack and Critch. Now, that sets up a whole other unique storyline of your kind of promoting from internal. And what does that mean for this balance that Diego Gigliani had said that he wants to have in the sporting leadership roles between outside MLS, internal MLS experience, and all of those things that should be at the table when you're having your front office make their decisions? It also leaves open the possibility for a technical director position. So you have if John Hackworth gets the sporting director, you still have an open technical director potentially. Maybe that's where you bring in this outside vision. It's still possible to have what Diego has promised us, even if Hackworth gets the sporting director job and Critchley gets the head coach. It's not as obvious and arguably doesn't mean as much because the front man in this is John Hackworth. And you're talking about his connections. You're talking about his ability to scout, sign, negotiate with players. And he's never really had that opportunity as the leader of an organization. I talked about his credentials last week and in the weeks before, mostly his experiences on the sidelines. So that would be a little bit more towards an experiment to me if you get John Hackworth as the sporting director plus David Critchley as a full-time head coach. The thing about David Critchley as a full-time head coach is you can do it while still offering a potential outside sporting director flexibility. So let's assume for a second that there's an outside sporting director that's hired. David Critchley could easily get a 1-year contract with options. And then you hold that until after the sporting director is announced. You give the sporting director a chance to kind of review and have discussions and evaluate what he actually, and basically sign off on David Critchley. The fact that you don't have to announce that for a period of time, especially making Critchley official. If he's coming back, there's no rush in when you have to announce that, really. So the timelines here could be early on the sporting director, and then you give them time to make that call. And don't go into this as a fan base thinking that they're playing this reactively, because a short list exists, options exist, and so pivoting could happen depending on what happens with the sporting director hire and their feelings about the head coach. But ultimately, if you're John Hackworth and Diego Gigliani and you're looking to retain at least a majority of the identity of St. Louis City, with a lot of the players coming back next season that are impact players this season, knowing the impact David Critchley has had on the players and the style of play, the alignment would already seem to be there. So there is something to be said for a sporting director having their say and choosing their person for a head coach, but there's also something to say about the head coach being that person to implement the sporting director's philosophy and vision. And if you're an organization bringing on a sporting director with maintaining somewhat of that identity, and you have a head coach who has been touted by just about everybody, players and front office, for his ability to get them back into the style of play that they want to be known for, it meshes a lot better than I think people give it credit for at times. The notion that a sporting director needs to have their own head coaching hire may be a little overblown given the success that David Critchley has had on a few different levels. And the other side of this is players. Player options don't have to be announced until Wednesday, November 26th. The season ends October 18th. That is a ton of time in between to make decisions on players. That's your window for the sporting director being hired and having a say in some of these player options. Now, there could be already likelihoods or scenarios written up by John Hackworth and Diego. Yeah, obviously, I would assume that they would have their preference or their recommendations. But unlike last year, I think it wouldn't surprise me if the club holds off on announcing until after a sporting director is selected. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, unless you're going with Hackworth and you just slow roll the announcement, to make as early of a call on the player options as you did last year. And part of that is because Lutz and company wanted to get this out in front of the players. They didn't have all of these other things in the air, uncertainty in the front office. They wanted the players to know before they left for their winter vacation. That was the reason it was announced so quickly. So they told the players before they left last season. This year, you might not have that luxury. And that's the nature of the game, where the players will understand you want the sporting director to come in, have a say in the players that he will have available on his roster, and then you'll call the players. You'll let them know that nature of the game in that. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see or hear the player options announced as quickly as we did last season, because there are other priorities here. You have to get that sporting director lined up. The only reason we would hear about it so quickly is if John Hackworth gets the job and he's the decision maker. Now, City has one match left, and this match is arguably the most important of David Critchley's tenure. It's all led to this moment. So if we circle back to David Critchley here, David Critchley has one final opportunity to earn the permanent head coaching position for St. Louis City. That opportunity is going to come with the goals that were set by the organization, with all the things that he's been working towards recently. And I will say that my friend Jeremy Clements has a really nice graphic that he's put on social media on a handful of places that compares the tenure of John Hackworth at the end of 2024 with David Critchley at the end of 2025, having coached through 18 games so far. You see Hackworth having a little bit better of a points per game number. You have Hackworth having a little bit better of a percentage of points taken. But the overall play, goals scored, goals allowed, a lot of metrics either are aligned, tied, or they skew better towards David Critchley. So the point in him putting this was a conversation him and I had that I made a statement that if you were pro John Hackworth in 2024, wanting to see him retain the job, you should be pro David Critchley in 2025. Part of that comes from how Critchley has evolved this team. It's not just through 18 games as a head coach. You break it down in his last 12 games, and you get from a 1.11 points per game up to a 1.33. You go in his last 9 games, and you're up to a 1.44 points per game. Last 5 games, a 2 point per game run. This year, a 1.33 points per game would put you in 7th place and securely in the playoffs. That is Critchley's last 12 games. So I'm not saying you need to do what we did last season and just magnify these smaller sample sizes out to a full season. I'm saying understand why Critchley has gotten better as the season has progressed. And Critchley himself has commented on that multiple times, not just in what you heard earlier with me, not just in post-game press conferences, pre-game press conferences. This is consistent in what he's been saying for his players. It's not just recency bias. It's what he took over for when Olaf Mellberg was let go. Critchley has talked about how the style was completely broken. The system wasn't working. This wasn't St. Louis City anymore. The players' confidence, I don't know if Critchley's ever said this, but it was obvious from players talking. The player confidence was down the drain. Everything was going against them. The results weren't there. The style wasn't there. The system was bad. They were playing scared. They weren't playing to score goals or to win. They were playing not to lose, and the confidence was shot. That's what Critchley took over, not just a lack of talent on the roster. It was a lack of all of those things, and he had to turn it around. So I think it does him a little bit of an injustice to take his full body of work, results-based, and say 1.11 points per game and tell that as the story. That's why context to me in the evolution of his season is the most important. Now, the anti-conversation to that is the lack of wins that Critchley has against playoff teams, his main negative. I also feel in that regard, you can only play the opponents in front of you. And are we going to penalize David Critchley for having a weaker schedule, quote unquote, down the stretch? And in the matches that you do play playoff opponents, some of them are explainable. You had that really odd matchup against Vancouver with the penalty called and how St. Louis should have won and giving up PKs, all of that oddity. You had LAFC that has been steamrolling every single team they've been playing. So now you're holding a couple losses against playoff teams against them where they're a little more explainable. And I don't think, I personally, I wouldn't hold that against any type of head coach, whether it's Mauricio Pochettino or David Critchley or anybody in between. So there's a lot that goes into this final game when it comes to David Critchley. There's a lot that goes into looking at what his resume is recently. And that's the narrative that I want to build. That's the context and the story that I want everyone to keep in mind as we go into this final game, because it really does seem like we are trending towards David Critchley getting this job full time. And I think it becomes an easier sell for the organization if he wins this final game. If he draws the final game, it gets a little dicier. If he loses, then you start to have a conversation about the results and consistency and not matching the players' desires. Because if you're a player, Marcel Hartl has said this multiple times, if you want David Critchley as your head coach, you have to perform. Otherwise, he's not going to have that backing. It's more of a conceptual idea as opposed to you being able to prove that he should have that job. But so far, the players have been doing that here recently. And I think that's something definitely worth hanging their hat on. Now, what I want to do here is shift a little bit from David Critchley to one of the more discussed players, not disgusting, but one of the more discussed players over the past few weeks and months, and that's Tomas Totland. This week, I had the opportunity to talk to Tomas Totland on a variety of topics. So I'll let you listen to that and watch it if you're looking on YouTube, but pay some special attention to some of the comments that he has about his own path this season that's largely been driven by his own recoveries and injuries, as well as his thoughts on the system and David Critchley. Tots goes pretty in depth on a few of these topics, and what he says is kind of illuminating on his path this season, because he missed a lot of time earlier this season under Olaf, and especially under Olaf into David Critchley with those muscle injuries. And he does, this is my most exciting thing, and it's a blink if you'll miss it because it's so quick, but I think it's so impactful. He does give his answer on whether he wants to see David Critchley as a full-time head coach, so pay attention to that. I'll be back on the other side to give my thoughts on his comments and some closing remarks before closing us out here on Flyover Footy. So here is my interview this week with City fullback Tomas Totland. Tomas Totland, thanks for joining us on Flyover Footy. You guys have a bye week right now. What have you been up to, and how nice is this for your family life?
No, it's been nice with a couple of days off now, and it's the weather starting to get cooler. So yeah, finally we can go out and take nice long walks. So no, it's been nice, and yeah, especially after that win as well, it was nice to have some quality time.
So talk to me about that win. First time back in the starting lineup in quite a while. What were the emotions like going into that game with that opportunity? Yeah,
I mean, it's been 2.5 months, I believe, since the last time I started, and yeah, it was. I could feel that it had been a while since I was going through that starting game routine, but yeah, it was. I knew what I had to do, and yeah, I felt like it went pretty good.
What were the conversations with Coach Critchley like heading into that match, and how did that differ from what you guys had been talking about beforehand in the weeks prior?
Yeah, no, for me it was more about playing more like the new philosophy that we have done now with, I mean, building out from the back a little more and not pinning up high as much, and yeah, I really enjoy that, to be able to connect out from the back. I think that was how we played a lot last year as well. So that's something that I'm used to.
So this whole season, I mean, we could go back weeks and months into the struggles you guys had earlier, but this progression into that, where you're getting back to, has it felt like getting back into playing when you first arrived last season into how you finished last season? Is that how it kind of feels now?
Yeah, sort of. You know, it's been a difficult season for me with the 2 injuries and yeah, new playing styles and what so. But yeah, I feel like lately it's been feeling more like it should, and yeah, hopefully from now on it'll only go up.
And this time you have between starts, what was that like for you personally, professionally? I mean, is this the first time that's kind of happened in your career where you've had that period of time where you weren't the first choice option since turning pro?
No, it's happened once before, but yeah, I think ultimately you just need to put your head down and keep working, and yeah, eventually it turns, and then often for the better.
What were some of the things that Coach Critchley has been talking to you about during this stretch of time? He mentioned recently just going with the form and the results kind of driving some of those decisions, but what have those conversations been like, and what he's wanted to see from you to begin earning these spots again?
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken, and yeah, it's more about me finding myself after the injuries and getting back to that confidence on the ball and with the body, and yeah, I feel like I said, that's slowly coming back now, and yeah, it's going to be very, very helpful for me to get a good offseason now, and then the preseason season into next year.
Talk to me about the injuries you've had. So how soon recently was it that you would say you've been 100% healthy?
It probably was around summer that I really felt that I could push the body a lot, but yeah, it's also a mental game with it as well, you know, because yeah, you come to that stretch where you pull the muscle prior, and you're like, oh, this is when it sort of happened, but yeah, I feel like getting 90 minutes and getting good training weeks helped me turn that into that. Yeah, my body's starting to feel back to normal.
So as someone, and plenty of fans have never experienced those kinds of muscle injuries, can you describe what it's like on the mental aspect coming back from that, where the doctors and the trainers might tell you, okay, you're good to go, but what is it like kind of pushing past that block?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, after you've pulled a muscle, you're most often gonna feel a little bit weaker in that muscle, and yeah, when you push it in games and in trainings, that leg that you pulled it will often get tired before the other one, and yeah, that's sort of when those mental thoughts come, but yeah, it's nothing to really do than to just train and build up the strength.
As you've kind of been getting that strength back in and becoming, fully 100% on both legs, what has the growth of the club been like in how you're learning to get back into the system that Critchley's employing? Is it tough? Does it feel like you're behind the 8 ball in that regard? And has that affected, I think, your ability to come back as strong as you wanted to?
Yeah, no, I think I do enjoy this playing style better than the one that we started on under Critch, where I was pinned up quite a lot and not that active with the ball, and yeah, being on the ball is one of my strengths, and yeah, I really enjoyed playing last weekend, and yeah, hopefully I can do the same in 2 weeks.
And Coach Critchley has shown he's not been shy to have you play on both sides of the field. You've obviously played both sides before, even before coming to St. Louis. So mentally, does it take anything different to gear up left side versus right side?
No, it doesn't really. I mean, it has its strengths. I used to play wing back on the left side, and then coming in to shoot and to cross is a great strength on that side. But yeah, it's more about body positions in the defense. I mean, you switch the body completely, and yeah, it's basically the same, just different angles.
This past game, what did you feel you did well, and what are you looking to build upon from that match?
No, I think it was more about just being myself on the ball, being calm on the ball, breaking pressure, and yeah, that's something that I waited to feel, and yeah, in this playing style, I felt that I could get on the ball a lot and do just that. So yeah, that's something that yeah, I want to take into the next 6-7 weeks and build on.
So you're one of the players who is still under contract for next year. There's no question about whether, well, at least there's little question about whether you'll be here next year. What is your opinion on David Critchley? Talk to me about what you've seen from him as a leader of you all, not just in his performance and the results, but how he's grown as a person and in leading this team since he's taken over.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell that the group is in a better place now than we were a couple months ago, and yeah, the recent results has been good. So yeah, it's I feel like the group's in a great place now, and yeah, going into these last few weeks, I think it's going to be great with Critchley.
One match left. What are you hoping to accomplish in this last game in a week and a half?
No, it's more about giving back to the fans who have been great this whole year with us, just like last year, and yeah, end off with a good win and to put some smiles on their faces.
Last serious question: do you want to see David Critchley as head coach next year?
Yes.
Easy as that. Okay, looking past the last game, what are some of your plans for the offseason? I don't know if I'll get a chance to talk to you here in the next few weeks, but what are you looking forward to after the season?
We're going to San Diego for a week, and then we'll go back to the snowy weather.
Are you looking forward to getting back into training camp next season, kind of starting fresh after everything that you've built towards the season? And tell me, is there value in building towards the end of the season and carrying momentum into next year? As a player, do you feel that that's something that you can do, is play well at the end of the season and then carry momentum to the next year?
Yeah, I mean, in some way, but yeah, it is a long break, and it's more about keeping the body in a good place to when we come back in early January, and then yeah, to get two good months before we start.
All right, Tomas Totland, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
There you have it. Tomas Totland unequivocally wants David Critchley back as city manager in 2026. Tomas Totland now joins Marcel Hartl as being on record, vocalizing, no doubt others feel the same way, but vocalizing their support for David Critchley. This goes back to earlier to what I was saying about the evolution and growth of the club, their style of play, the players' responses under David Critchley. And the reason I think it's most impactful to hear this from Tomas Totland is how bought in a player like Tomas Totland is through his entire journey. Tomas Totland's journey of being, quote, benched under David Critchley, which is what a lot of the narrative was as he was missing time when Conrad Wallem saw right back's play time, is also put into perspective a little bit by Totland himself. And I loved hearing from him on the mental aspect of recovering from a muscle injury. It's an important thing to remember for all players to go through this. A big thing here in this kind of context is that Conrad Wallem and his ability to play right back may have provided Totland more opportunity to get the physical and mental recovery he needed without really being forced back into it. You know, you've got a lot of other players in the past like Edu Leuven, Klaus, a lot of those kinds of players, Cedric Teuchert, even this year, Rasmus Alm, Joachim Nilsson. They tried to rush themselves back, and it's not the staff on this that I'm talking about, but it's the players' desire and the coaching needing to get them back on the field because all of these are hugely impactful players. Tomas Totland is a hugely impactful player as well, but when you have a player of the caliber of Conrad Wallem that you need to give him a consistent spot anyway, this is part of the man managing that I think David Critchley has done this year, and I view it as having done well. He talked to us earlier this year about giving Conrad Wallem a consistent playing spot. And when you're looking at Wallem's areas of expertise in both fullback spots, in central midfield, even as a wide mid, you see Devin Padelford over there that we have on loan. You see Leuven and Durkin. You see Songbin Jong. And you see a right back spot that has a returning Tomas Totland from injury, a muscle injury that he himself talked about the mental aspect being the most difficult to come back from. The imbalance that exists between those muscles on both sides of your body when you're going through this. And I think Wallem might have actually provided Totland cover. So Totland obviously wanted to be back on the field early and often, but now that he is back and he's under contract for 2026, he's coming back to the team. Now he has 100% healthy, physical and mental. And I think what Critchley's approach to this was kind of using this as an opportunity to give two players what they need. Slow roll Totland, allow him to get fully ready, fully healthy, and make sure you don't have some kind of picking up like a re-aggravation of the injury, and you're mentally ready to go. And he had a great performance against Austin. Tomas Totland was top 3 in FOTMOB and his overall score. He played the game extremely well. He did what he needed to do. And I think everybody was not just proud to see Totland back on the field, but happy with his performance in that role. And that's what we need to carry forward. I expect to see Totland start again against Real Salt Lake. He's our starting right back going into next season. So there's no reason to me after that performance against Austin why he wouldn't see more time. And so this plays into the conversation about David Critchley and how he's been able to kind of manage the players in this regard, just adding another notch in the belt to him as well. But also what it means for Tomas Totland. I think now as we sit in early to mid-October, Tomas Totland he went through that this season, and it's been a long season for him, both under Olaf Melberg and transitioning into David Critchley while being injured. But better late than never. And now we know that Totland is going to be healthy going into 2026. And that is something that we can bank on, at least, to have a healthy, quality right back, because God knows that we don't need more questions as far as some of these positions go. Left back, Padelford's option is up. Central midfield, Durkin is coming off his U22 contract. Who's going to be our left mid? Do we need a second striker? A lot of questions exist. Henry Kessler his option is reportedly expensive. So the fewer questions we have on these top tier players that we don't need to elevate higher in their positions like Totland, the better off we'll be. And so that'll wrap it up here on Flyover Footy. Thank you for joining me on this look at CITY2, David Critchley, Tomas Totland. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully it was a nice kind of breath in the course of this season. We all know it's kind of a weird way to end the season where you have a FIFA international break right before the last game. It's no secret that I want a fall to spring schedule, and I know the arguments against it. We'll talk about that in the off season, but the fall to spring schedule doesn't really matter in this sense. It's mostly MLS playing through international windows and what that does to the schedule, because you build in your schedule around this kind of thing. It's impactful because it's at the end of the season. This would have happened at the beginning of the season no matter what, but it takes the luster out of it all. And for a league that is wrapped up in Apple TV and MLS Season Pass and what that means for the visibility in general of Major League Soccer, to have the league basically pause, or a majority of them pause, the second to last week it cuts the momentum out from under you building into decision day. And that's unfortunate. And I would like to see that change somehow. Next season is going to be wonky in general with an early start, a multi-month break for the World Cup. So next year is just it's going to be crazy as MLS continues to go forward. But what we're doing on Flyover Footy here is after this break, we're going to get back next week. We're going to hammer the RSL preview. We're going to look at CITY2 against Ventura County. And we have one last Flyover fallout left. And if you know Santiago Beltran and myself, you know that we're runners. We like to do that. We're both participating in the City Sprint 5K. So we'll both be there that Sunday before the CITY2 playoff game. We'll look forward to seeing everybody out there. We'll talk about it more next week. But if you're going to be out there, look for us. We're going to try to do some kind of Fallout live at that time, sometime during the day. So that'll be exciting to look forward to. But for now, enjoy if you want to watch MLS matches, international matches this weekend. We will be back next week to talk more City. We'll be back on social media. We've got one match left. We can't wait to preview that. And we can't wait to see kind of what comes from this match and what it means for the future of David Critchley. We know he's going to stay with the organization. He said it before. He said it recently that the front office has said he will stay with the organization in some capacity if he does not get this head coaching job. So his future with City is here. But the question is, can he pull this off so that when he goes into the offseason, he ends up as City head coach? Because, I mean, if you look at the record in the last few games for David Critchley, I'm just going to close with this because I think it's a positive way to close it out. David Critchley, if he wins against Real Salt Lake, will have 4 wins in 5 and decisions in 5 of his last 6. That'll be a draw, win-win, loss, win-win if he ends up with a win against Real Salt Lake. That's a greater than 2 points per game in the last 5. That's what you want. The momentum as you've built towards the end of this season and everything that's entailed. That's what you want to give your players, give him a full training camp and allow that to be the start. We're going to dive into Critchley, Hackworth, the sporting director, head coach, and plenty more. And we're going to have a big season-ending recap show when all is said and done after that final game, that next week after Real Salt Lake. So stay tuned for it all. Off-season coverage as news breaks. Flyover is not stopping, just like we have never stopped before. Always a fan of covering City. Can't wait to keep doing it. Thank you for joining us on this week's Flyover Footy, and I'll talk to you later.